speaking of leader of the free world, there was another man who threw his hat into the ring in this year's presidential election. He was a former surgeon who had an inspiring life story. He had a fascination with pyramids. He loved supplements. And he had his own theories about pretty much everything.
Couldn't let anything go by. I had to get revenge.
He couldn't let it. That's why when I am out and about, I have to admit, I sometimes sneak a glance because my eyes cut every direction because I don't know if Dr. Ben is coming after me. If he's seen some of these clips. Now, Ben Carson a couple of weeks ago, after losing to Donald Trump, if you recall, there was a period where Ben Carson was polling well in the Republican primary. And you may ask, why would a guy who seems completely dissociated from reality, have no understanding of how government works, and have a sort of bizarre personal history, which he might have been lying about, why would he do well in a Republican primary? Because that sounds perfect for a Republican primary is why. And Donald Trump was like, wait a second, this guy's sort of mellow craziness, it might be interrupting my overt craziness. What am I going to do? And what he did was he gave an amazing speech in Iowa where he was like, really? I mean, this guy said he stabbed people. It's like he's a sick puppy. He even compared him to a child molester at one point. And then a couple of weeks, literally, I think a couple weeks later, or a couple of months later, no more than a couple of months later, Ben Carson endorsed Donald Trump for president. And he went around the country and actually revealed in TV interviews that Ben wasn't actually very nice. He got pretty pissed. Like, so as an example, he'd be on Morning Joe being like, what you have now is Saul Alinsky is literally running the government, and we are driving over a cliff driven by a Muslim bus driver, and soon we'll all be homeless. And then someone will be like, okay, got it. But what about the grab woman by their vagina tape? And he'd be like, shut up. Stop interrupting me. I'm talking about Saul Alinsky. So he got really fired up. And then the word was a couple of weeks ago that he had actually put out word that he did not want a cabinet position in the Trump administration. And there was the notion that maybe Ben Carson was secretly semi-savvy, and he realized that this thing could very well be an incredible debacle with, if we still have a functioning sort of civil society and legal system, probably with many, many indictments coming out of it. But no, the word is now is that Ben Carson will be leading housing and urban development, which basically means, and I'll read from it, in a statement released on Monday, Trump called Carson, quote, distinguished national leader with a brilliant mind. Dr. Carson is a distinguished national leader who overcame his troubled inner city youth in Detroit to become a renowned neurosurgeon who served as director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. I'm thrilled to nominate Ben Carson to be our next secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. He has a brilliant mind and is passionate about strengthening communities and families within those communities. I don't know how I'm going to maintain doing that impression. Now that this guy is in position to make a lot of people homeless and to sort of be a vehicle for every type of real estate charlatan scam that you can imagine that could leverage the federal government, starting with, guess who? The fucking president of the United States, who is a real estate charlatan himself. And in Trump University, a legally acknowledged scamster. He paid the fine. But I will say this about Donald Trump. There was a couple of months ago where I think he gave a much more accurate read of Ben Carson than this new notion of him being a brilliant mind and a distinguished leader. I actually think Donald Trump sort of nailed it here in Fort Dodge, Iowa.
Well, he said he has pathological disease. Now, if you're pathological, there's no cure for that, folks. Okay? There's no cure for that. But if you're a child molester, there's no cure. They can't stop you. Pathological, there's no cure. Now, he said he was pathological. Okay. How stupid are the people of Iowa? How stupid are the people of the country to believe this crap? So here's the good news. He's now saying all of that stuff happened because otherwise he's a liar. What the hell have we come to? What have we come to? When we have to believe this kind of stuff, and we're going to put somebody in office who considers himself to have pathological disease. Read the definition in the dictionary of pathological disease. And I'm not saying it. He said it about himself before he knew he was going to run for office.
I think we're going to need to clip that for YouTube as the most prescient self-descriptive speech Donald Trump has ever given. He thought he was talking about Ben Carson, but who was he really talking about? And he thought he was talking about the Republican primary. But yes, Donald Trump won Iowa. So I'll ask, how stupid are the people of Iowa? Donald Trump became president. How stupid is this country? Oh, and by the way, Ben, I actually heard that pathological disease can be overcome if the person becomes the Department of the Housing and Urban Development.
I heard it's contagious, too.
Yeah. Am I a pathological disease or are you a pathological disease?
What if we're all pathological?
What if we're all pathological? Hey, Ben, I have this new proposal. It's called biblical real estate. The government gives me money and we knock over people's homes in the inner city and we build casinos. And then people in the inner city will get big homes in the suburbs through the magic of the market. Exactly, Ben. Nailed it. Oh, my God. I can't wait to implement biblical real estate on a mass scale. But let me just say one thing to you, Donald, because you're talking to me like I'm one of your Trump U students. But don't forget, I made a fortune off of grapefruit extract and selling it to people. So let me just ask you this. In that biblical real estate plan, is there a 15% markup that goes back to Candy's secret Cayman account? Wow, Ben, you really play hardball. Yeah. I think that's the thing that we have to figure out with Ben Carson. Is it genuine, like, mental damage and lack of ability, and he's just going to get played? Or is he the one sitting there like, I've heard in the new Bible-based housing demolition project, there's a 10% cut for the Carson family.
It's both.
It's both? Okay. It certainly would, all evidence would indicate both. A little, something that's actually a little Tony Blair-like.
Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.